Climate change, pollution, key words that everyone knows and everyone should care about. If the critical situation our planet is in right now is to be turned around, we have to act quickly and plan on a long-term basis. This is what Epson also thinks, and as a consequence they gave a press conference in the European capital of Brussels to present its Environmental Vision 2050. Many journalists from across Europe attended the event. It's an ambitious program through which Epson wants to contribute to solving the most critical environmental problems.
Today is a special day for Epson, as it marks an important milestone in our company's history and also in our long-standing commitment to conduct our business in harmony with the environment. A global company like Epson, with more than 88,000 employees around the world, has the responsibility to contribute to a global solution. Epson's Environmental Vision 2050, as it will be presented to you today, is a direct result of this reasoning.
Why act now? This was the question asked at the beginning of the event by Dr. Raffaele Salerno from the Epson Meteo Center in Milan.
Climate change is not a matter of a future, it's not a matter of a debate, it's not a matter of what will happen in the future. Climate change is happening, climate change is now.
All-time record heat waves, deterioration of glaciers, melting of polar caps, steady rise in the sea level, spread of deserts, shortage of drinking water. These are all consequences of the climate change and are already obvious. If nothing is done to remedy the situation, it will become more and more acute.
It is really clear that the concentration of greenhouse gases is increasing, and all climate models, from the simplest one to the most complex, confirm that this will result in higher global mean surface temperature. Global temperatures by the end of this century will be higher than at any time during the last 120,000 years.
In order to avoid this scenario, Epson has high aims within the scope of its Environmental Vision 2050 with regard to the lowering of greenhouse gas emissions.
The drastic situation which we are now facing calls for drastic measures, recognizing that the Earth's carrying capacity is limited and believing that everyone must share responsibility for reducing environmental impacts equally. Epson is aiming to reduce CO2 emissions by 90% across the life cycle of all products and services by the year 2050.
The emission of other greenhouse gases shall be reduced to zero. In addition, all products shall be part of reuse and recycling programs, and the company will actively participate in initiatives for biodiversity and ecosystems. But is a reduction of 90% of the CO2 emissions by 2050 realistic?
From the normal, usual thoughts, it is a very high target. But I can say whether it's realistic or unrealistic, it's not going to matter. We should eliminate CO2 as much as we can. That's why we set 90%. Realistic is I cannot say unrealistic. We have to eliminate as much as we can.
In order to achieve these long-term goals, Epson has developed numerous concrete measures which shall be implemented in the short and mid-term, i.e. within the next 10 years.
One of the first things that we will do is to focus on our clean rooms. The second initiative is to focus on biodiversity projects to make sure that anything that we cannot cut, we can compensate. And the third aspect would be to working on at component level, making sure that we reduce the manufacturing emissions of those components.
Thus, among others, the size, weight and number of components shall be reduced. Included here is also the avoidance of waste, and this does not only mean the recycling but also the refilling of ink cartridges, considerably larger cartridges as well as more durable products. For instance, the company's thinking about a completely new kind of printer.
This is basically a printer with no cartridges. And what does that mean? It means that there's no transport for those cartridges, there's no manufacturing of those cartridges obviously, there's no shipment, there's no packaging, there's no collection, there's no recycling. All those environmental impacts we've taken away. That printer will be able to contain the ink for all the lifetime of the appliance. And after the end of that, Epson will recover that printer, bring it back, and reuse its entirety or maybe some of the components.
With regard to the clean rooms, which are responsible for 40% of the total CO2 emissions within Epson, there will be a team of specialists focusing on how to reduce the energy consumption. Even with these strict CO2 reduction targets, there will still be a rise of the global surface temperature, which will have a devastating effect on biodiversity and ecosystems.
You know, a lot of people are planting trees, but we want to take it a little step beyond that. I mean, planting trees is okay, but we are concerned about the biodiversity and the whole ecosystem. So the Epson forest is carefully studied to reintroduce all the fauna and the flora, also the animals that populated that area, to make sure that by introducing these new trees, we don't create another environmental problem. So we tend to work with partners, NGOs, specialists, to actually have an assessment of the area and of the biodiversity living in that area.
There are several reforestation activities of Epson around the world. In Portugal, in Germany, Indonesia and the Philippines. After the press conference, the journalists were pleased with the aims and measures planned.
It's very important that a large company like Epson do such a good job and also talk to other companies and to the press, because the press are writing about it. That's very important for the opinion in the world. I'm always a little skeptic, you know, but I feel that they have a really good point.
I think it's a must that also companies set these kind of objectives, and not only companies, also perhaps policymakers and others. In an exhibition room, the journalists were able to see for themselves the past environmental achievements of Epson and also some of the latest Epson technologies which have the potential to contribute greatly to environmental protection. Take, for example, e-paper, a very thin display which might in the future replace a large amount of printed paper, either in daily office work or when reading the newspaper. And also the micro-piezo technology with which already today colour filters for LCD panels are produced with inkjet printers. In future, it might be possible to print whole circuit boards instead of producing them chemically. These are only two examples of how Epson technology will contribute in the future to a better environment. Epson's activities for the environment are also well acknowledged by the highest political ranks in Europe. After the press conference, journalists and Epson representatives were invited to a reception at the European Parliament, which is within walking distance of the event location. The host of the European Parliament recognized the exemplary role of Epson regarding environmental protection.
I saw and I read a lot from your 2050 vision, and I think that's what the European Union needs. We need partners, not only in Brussels, to work on this hot climate topic issue. And it's helpful to see that important partners, not only in Europe, are active here in this area.
In addition, the EU Commission praised the highly ambitious environmental aims of Epson. The Commission also announces measures to promote environmentally friendly products.
The Commission is considering a sustainable consumption and production action plan. Some sketches or an outline of this plan would include the idea of trying to drive the environmental performance of products by setting minimum requirements and by promoting the best through environmental performance benchmarks.
Mr. Akihiko Sakai stressed the special meaning of the European policy with regard to environmental issues.
The European Union has become a global role model. It has established itself as a leader and a trendsetter on environmental issues. Not only is the EU driving the debate on climate changes, but key pillar of its environmental legislation have also been copied or provided a blueprint for similar legislation in other parts of the world.
One thing is obvious for Epson when it comes to its Environmental Vision 2050.
Sure, Epson cannot do alone, so that's why we wanted to invite even competitor, customer, suppliers, governmental groups. We honor to invite these missions and goals.
Epson has already successfully achieved the first step in implementing these aims, the creation of a broader awareness of the importance of climate and environmental issues.